Well, we're good. You can tell I'm at home. My dog is walking around. We're good unless, of course, a delivery man shows up and he goes crazy. But, we'll deal. We'll deal. It's all good.
Okay.
It's all
I don't know if you can hear the train going by.
Welcome, everyone, to the December 2024 edition of The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. For your edification, your enlightenment, and your entertainment, too. I'm Jim Hunt, Communications Manager at Sustainable CT, so if you're looking for someone to blame for this podcast, well, you can blame me. But remember, this is never a one-way conversation. We always want to hear from you for our edification and enlightenment. Drop us a note, won't you? To info@sustainablecT.org. The Impact is brought to you in part by the Tremaine Foundation. The Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation seeks and funds innovative projects that advance solutions to basic and enduring problems, and we are oh so glad they do. Visit them at tremainefoundation.org. Remember, Sustainable CT is independently funded. We don't have a magical rainbow unicorn money tree, no sir, but you can be a Sustainable CT sponsor. Find out how at sustainablect.org. My guest today is Laura Francis. Yes, the Laura Francis, currently serving as Interim Director of the South Central Regional Council of Governments, or COG. We'll surely talk about that, but prior to joining the South Central COG, Laura served for 30 years in the town of Durham. First as town clerk for 15 years, and then for another 15 as First Selectman. Now, that's a hell of a run. Laura has also been a friend and supporter of Sustainable CT for many years, currently serving as co-chair of the Sustainable CT Board of Directors, which sort of makes her my boss, so we'll need to watch my step today. Laura attended Providence College, and I only mentioned that so that I could say it's the home of them fighting friars. I just thought that was good, where she earned a bachelor's degree in political science and public administration. I am very glad that she's taken the time to talk to me today. Laura Francis, welcome to the show. And thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it. Because you've got nothing else to do, I know. You got all the time in the world. Let's start with basic stuff. How did you first get involved with Sustainable CT?
So as many of us who are listening know, Sustainable CT was a brainchild of CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities.
Right.
That organization formed a working group to study the concept, because some other states have started to do things like this. And the charge of that working group was to decide whether or not it would be a good idea to build out something that like Sustainable CT in Connecticut. I came in on that working group towards the end of that work, and it was very clear to me that there was a lot of enthusiasm to pursue the idea and build out the concept. I was then asked to be on the advisory committee, which was the committee charged with actually building out Sustainable CT.
Yeah.
And that was a fascinating process because of deciding, what makes a sustainable community. That whole idea it is quite amorphous. So how do we come up with action items that are actionable, number one, attainable, and meaningful? So that was just a very arduous but fascinating process, talking through all that. Then I was asked to be on the board of directors and take a leadership position. So I feel quite blessed to be able to say I was part of the entire journey.
You sure were. And I found it was fascinating. Of course, I came in, I wasn't at the beginning of all of this, but the history of it fascinates me in the town involvement and everybody from the towns, by and for towns, and the whole concept of that organic evolution, what towns needed, what they were looking to do. It really was meant to support their efforts. We're not here for us. Well, it's a good day at the office when we do something for Sustainable CT. That's not the point. The point of it is really to support towns and provide them with what they need. So when this all started, hearing from them and all those working groups that got together and decided, like you said, what does sustainability mean? What does it mean to a town? What does it mean to Connecticut to be able to do that? Now, how did we evolve over the years? Have we evolved in a way, yeah, and good or ill? Has the mission changed? Has what we do changed? Have we improved? Have we gotten into areas where we could still need a little bit of improvement? How do you see it in the evolution?
Well, we built in evolution in the process of sustainable CT because we know that, first of all, when a community does the foundational work necessary to build out a sustainable community, we know that we then have to add action items that will take a deeper dive once a community builds that foundation. Mm-hmm. Also, there are emerging threats and opportunities that just from being alive happens year after year. So we knew right from the start that there would have to be a look, an evaluation every year. Are the action items still relevant? Are they still actionable? Are they still meaningful to creating? And what do we need to add?
Yeah.
We also knew that as municipalities achieved success and certification, that we wanted them to still stretch. So we knew right from the start, we started with bronze and silver. We knew from the beginning that we eventually wanted to get to gold. But then we found out in that process that maybe there still needs to be something more to reach for. Yeah. And that's when the idea of the climate leader designation came about. Okay. So I believe there's always going to be areas where we can add to the program.
Platinum next.
To the program. and a lot of that feedback comes from the town officials and volunteers who are working the program.
Right. Yeah, we've often had these discussions that what's baked into what we do and how we do it is this kind of this responsiveness. We're not going to dictate to towns what they need or what they should do and how they should do it. We're in a position where we're listening, we're constantly listening and responsive to what the towns are asking us to do. Any new ideas, anything they need, new support, any way we can help them achieve their goals, we're constantly listening and responding to that. So yeah, we heard it about gold. Climate leader was a huge thing. It's still, it's a pretty big deal because we're trying to, again, kind of bake into this whole process support for the towns achieving these lower energy bills and lower energy use and climate resilience and everything that goes with it. It's been quite a ride. We're not done. I agree with you. We're constantly going to have to evolve as needs bear out.
We're also going to have to continue to look for the intersectionality, which I think also makes this program so successful. Yeah. Because we realize, while perhaps energy and, climate resiliency and all of that drove some of us to this work, we also know that there's intersectionality with so many other facets of life. Sure. From transportation, from economic development. And what I would like to see happen with Sustainable CT is for us to get more involved with public health. We already have actions that I would call public health related. I'm personally fascinated by the blue zone. If you know what that is, people have studied areas of the world where communities have a higher percentage of people who live past 100. And they have found, even though these zones are in disparate parts of the world, there are common elements of the way people live that kind of make them more resilient, be able to live longer, etc. And it has to do with diet. It has to do with exercise and mobility. And it has to do with community, building a strong community, having a lot of access to people and support from people. Isolated people are not as healthy as people who congregate with others,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And I think we do have actions already in our menu that pertain to that, complete streets and, walkable communities, et cetera. But I think we could be more intentional to talk about public health related issues that would create more sustainable communities.
That's interesting. I love that. There's a lot there. There's a lot there that we could do. Talk about the intersectionality for sure. Let me ask you, in your before life, you were the selectman of Durham for 15 years. Obviously, a pretty defining experience for you, at least professionally. Tell us about that. How did it come? How did it come about? What did you find so meaningful in it that you kept coming back for 15 years? Do you miss it anything?
Well, first and foremost, it was the biggest privilege and honor of my life to be able to do that. Holding that much public interest, public trust.
Yeah.
At the same time, terrifying, exhilarating, and humbling. And I came to the position, I was the town clerk, and in that position, I had also the privilege of being a big part of the team. So I was not isolated in that job. I was able to have a lot of influence over other parts of the town hall operation. So it did interest me. I like variety in my life.
You sure get a lot of it when you're the small town administration.
So there was an opening to run. I guess professionally, I was at a time of my life where maybe I had already done a few things and I wanted to do a little more.
Yeah. So
I took a chance. And you cannot run for an elected office without accepting the fact that you may lose. And I think that also excited me because then I would have had to see what else was out there.
Yeah.
So I, again, had the privilege and honor of winning. And one of the first things that I was approached about was, number one, from a resident who wanted to form a clean energy task force. That was the precursor to a lot of our sustainable committees that are out there today.
Ah, great. Yeah.
The previous First Selectman had said no for whatever reason.
Okay.
So that led me, into this work. And then two, it was brought to my attention that, we had the Superfund. I knew we had a Superfund. But people came to me frustrated that it had been 20, 25 years already without much action being taken.
Okay.
And so I kind of made that my mission of getting to a yes, or sometimes you got to get to a no sooner than, later. And I was the first selectman in the town of Durham that had a 4-year term. And I realized that I can do that. I can work on something big with 4 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference. Yeah.
It makes a lot of difference. However, I just didn't know how big it was. And I made a personal commitment that I would stay as long as it took to get that water line in the town of Durham so that people would no longer have to be frightened by the water coming out of their taps. And it took 15 years, all of it. In fact, I had to go back after I left. I had to go back for the ribbon cutting because while we were at that finish line after 15 years, it still took a little bit more to cross the finish line.
Doesn't it amaze you? And you're involved in this, so you have a bird's eye view. And I'm usually the voyeur on the outside, looking in, watching this kind of I don't know whether it's healthy skepticism or not, but I'm looking at how long things take to accomplish, even sometimes especially if everybody's on board. Everybody knows this has to happen, right? And yet it will take literally years to come to some kind of agreement to actually put a shovel in the ground, make it happen. And of course, you get everybody's particular personal interests involved and money issues, of course. I'm not saying it's uncomplicated. It can be very complicated. But you know the old yarn. The old yarn is, it only took us 4 years to defeat the Nazis. Why does it take 15 years to accomplish things like this? And just because I can imagine the costs incurred in taking so long are just pile up, just quadruple when things take that long. Why do you think that is, as someone who's been through this process?
Well, when you drill down in it, you will find very good reasons why it takes so long.
Okay.
First of all, you want the public to be involved.
Sure.
You want to make sure that you reach out to all the stakeholders. And public engagement is arduous. It takes time because you have to consider those opinions in the planning process. So who's going to say that's not a good thing? Okay.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
Then you are talking
democracy
about,
is messy.
yeah.
Right?
Then you're dealing in a project such as this. You're dealing with multi-jurisdiction.
Okay.
And that's necessary for funding. A small town like Durham could never have afforded to build out that system on its own. $26 million with an operating budget of $6-7 million
Sure.
is nearly impossible without burdening residents overly.
Sure.
So you're dealing with that. And when federal dollars particularly are involved, you have to make sure that you have vetted the best, most cost-effective solution.
Yeah.
So even though intuitively you might know the best path to take, you still have to go through a feasibility process where you make sure that you considered all options.
Yeah.
So that you can look to the taxpayers and say, this is the best, most cost-effective solution.
Yeah. I hear you. I do, and I get that. I actually haven't been a voyeur my entire life. I've been involved in a lot of these myself over the years. What becomes a sense of urgency, especially with climate change breathing down our necks in the way that it is, the kind of efforts that we need to take within the span of, literally, there's a finite time span here. The window isn't going to remain open forever. How many more metaphors can I use? So in the next, 5 and 10 years, we've really got to do some things that create a lot of change in what we do, how we do it, physically on the ground, and also financially, and all the intersectionality, as you call it. And that's so I'm just a little concerned that, our methodology of taking time, and I totally understand why it takes time, especially in a democracy. Everybody's got to come to the table. There's different interests. We want to try to work out, best practices, everything else. But boy, it's one of those things that scares me a little bit. Are we capable of meeting the demand of the moment? And sometimes I wonder. So
the challenge always is resisting the temptation to follow another shiny object.
True. Yeah.
And knowing that projects have inherent timelines that are long, you just have to make sure that you don't follow another shiny object and take your attention off the project.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do. It's very easy to do. And when a project, as big as that, and look, not all of them are, that. Sure. But in a project as big as that, you're also dealing with turnover. I got very comfortable working with people who retired during this process.
Yeah.
And, then we bring on new people. And so I think you just have to resist the temptation and not follow a shiny object. I also think that what we're doing with Sustainable CT is that we're creating a process that makes people look at everything through a certain lens. We talk about that with equity, right? We want, through our equity toolkit, for planners and decision makers, policy makers to, put on that equity lens while they're doing that work. I think we're also creating almost a charge to keep that sustainability lens on. And I think we've done that.
Yeah.
I think we've done that. Especially, and I think the CEOs that we've worked with over many years, some of the ones with longer tenures, will understand this even more so. I came into office as First Selectman in 2007. What happened then? We had the biggest recession that we had known in modern history. We had, during my tenure, we had, 5, 6 named storms that devastated communities. I don't think there's any more arguing the fact that things are changing.
Yeah.
Economically, sociologically, socially, the climate, with everything. So we now, as CEOs, and I even see it with the newer ones, they're coming in understanding that a decision can't be made in a vacuum anymore.
Right.
It has to be made with that lens on, that it has to be sustainable for it to be the right decision.
Yeah. Well, and in your newest, your current role as director, you're the interim director at South Central. It's a lot different than being a selectman of a town. You're looking at really being able to do some collective work with regional players, and really have some collaboration. Talk about, when you said don't do it in a vacuum, I know this wasn't the intention, but it made me think you can't do it alone either. You've got to be able to have, like you said, these are regional issues. Financially, you can't do it alone. Also, the impact of whatever it is you're working on generally impacts more than the town you're sitting in. So just tell us a little bit about your experience at South Central's Council of Governments, where, well, first of all, how did you get into that? How were you invited to join there, and how has it been different? What's the hallmark of the difference in how you're dealing with towns and getting things done in a Council of Government setting?
Well, yes. When I started to float the idea of, when I made the decision that I wasn't going to run in 2023, I started to look. I first had to decide, okay, am I going to retire, or do I still want to work?
You're too young to retire, for heaven's sake.
And when I decided I still wanted to work,
sure.
I really did some reflection and said, well, what kind of work? And I love the work. And I had a great relationship with my home COG, River COG. And when I heard of a pending retirement happening here, I inquired about, what the plan was, and then was encouraged to apply. And I consider this job just an extension of what I do, but now I do it with 15 other partners.
Right. And
in a way where I can help connect dots. I think a municipal CEO, the most fun part of that is connecting dots, connecting people who have needs to services, connecting, people with ideas to implementers, that kind of a thing. And so I believe I'm doing that here. I also think it's fascinating to try to find opportunities. We've been talking in the state of Connecticut for so long, through the Moore Commission, through ACIR, how can we do more things on a regional basis? And through all of that conversation, some things have risen to the top. And I think the state of Connecticut, the legislature, is more and more willing and sometimes able to push things to the COG. The COGs had, before I got here even, started to get a lot better standing with state government and the legislature. So I think it's an exciting time for COG.
Yeah.
Funding has been increased, and exposure has been increased. So I'm hoping to make a difference here and to try to come up with, all right, municipalities, what are you having the hardest time with? What tasks are you charged with that we can take off your hands and do it on a regional basis? Or how how can we help connect communities? I came to this position as a transportation planner, and it is fascinating the evolution of transportation and the way we think about it in such a short period of time, right? Back in the day when we were talking about trails, we called them rec trails. Now we call them multi-use trails because now we're building them and planning them so that it could be part of the whole transportation commuting network. Maybe that trail, which we used to think of as recreational, is now part of the leg, part of that last mile to get to the train station or to the transit hub. So I'm just thrilled and feel, again, blessed to be part of that conversation on a number of different fronts.
Well, how does sustainable CT fit into this machinery? I mean, what role can we play to support what you're doing, what the COGs generally are doing? How do you think we fit into this?
I think that sustainable CT has a bird's eye view of the kind of activities that towns are choosing to do within our menu of action and can help COGs point out things that, you know what, maybe could be done together and or on a regional basis. And the system that we've built in Sustainable C allows for that, right? If two municipalities do something together, you get points. Both of you get points.
Yeah, we certainly push the collaboration. That's
right.
That's a big thing for us. Absolutely.
Right. And the embedding the CT fellows at the COG is at first very practical. We have office space and we have the administrative structure right for that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it creates a single outlet to find those areas within amongst the communities where they can do things together, or identify things that could get replicated at least. If not done together, at least a process or a program can get replicated. I love how COGs can help standardize applications. You know, often people say we have 169 towns doing things 169 different ways.
Right.
Well, the COGs act as facilitators to have those regional conversations through board meetings, through committee meetings. And I find that municipal officials, let's face it, they come from diverse communities. They have diverse political or educational experiences. Yet when they're around that table solving a common problem, all of those differences go away.
Yeah, it's very refreshing to see that. Everybody thinks they're off doing their own thing, and they become very, understandably so, very focused on what they are doing. And get everybody in a room, and you go, oh, I'm not the only one doing it. Everybody, there are lots of people doing the same thing, or having the same idea, or have the same goal. That happens a lot. It's
and you know what? I found that as a refreshing, I like the word that you use, refreshing surprise when I left the town clerk world. So when I was the town clerk in my tenure, we were more involved than town clerks are today in the election process. So even though many of us were elected by political parties, we knew when we got into that office, we had to shed those titles.
Right.
Because of our hands-on involvement with the election process. I thought going into the CEO world that would change, because I had some contact with some mayors and first selectmen who outwardly were quite political. But I was so happy to learn that there was much more collaboration and those people were not walking around with the D and the R on their lapels.
Yeah,
so I think the residents of the state of Connecticut should be pleased with that.
Yeah, especially in local governance, there isn't a Republican or Democrat way or conservative or liberal way to pave a street or collect, or have, municipal trash collection. Some of these things are just very practical, necessary, day-to-day, quality of life stuff for your residents of your town. And the whole idea of I'm going to champion my party goes out out the window. And thankfully, at least in the local level, for sure. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about lots of things, but also the campaign for sustainable CT and more about COGs and wonderful things like that. We'll be right back. We'll return to our program in just a moment. You've been listening to The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. Our first ever direct fundraising campaign to Connecticut residents, the Campaign for a Sustainable CT, is happening right now through December 31st. The public, you, are invited to join in this unique opportunity to amplify your support for sustainability efforts across the state. And the fabulous people at the Hampshire Foundation have generously offered to match every contribution dollar for dollar, doubling the impact of your gift. So this holiday season, you can give the gift of sustainability, because it really is the thought that counts, am I right? For the people in your life who appreciate truly a meaningful gift, consider making a donation to the Campaign for a Sustainable CT in their names. You can make a gift on behalf of anyone you like, a friend, a family member, even a pet. You know, you and they will be helping us to fight climate change, protect the environment, support sustainable transportation, champion affordable housing, strengthen local economies, celebrate the arts, and embrace equity. And your holiday will be all the happier, knowing that your gift is doubled. Can Macy's say that? Heck no. Now through December 31st, your support will go twice as far. Don't miss this chance to drive meaningful change in your community and across the state. So now's the time to take action. Now's the time to double your impact. Go to sustainablecT.org and click on the green Support Us tab. And please give what you can. Have the happiest of holidays, and thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Laura Francis, who is currently the interim director of the South Central Regional Council of Governments, and she's also the co-chair of the Sustainable CT Board of Directors. And it's been a really excellent conversation thus far. I want to pursue a couple of things about councils of governments. They fascinate me. And I just want to get your take on this because I've talked to Sam Gold and some other folks who are in the COG world. In Connecticut, we don't like counties. For whatever reason, or whatever the history is there with counties, we've kind of gotten rid of the county. We don't want to have the counties. And instead, we have COGs, these councils of government, that act sort of like counties, but they're not really counties. They're not elected officials. You don't have a revenue stream to call your own, taxation authority or something. How do you view the COGs generally as a functioning element of government? It's pretty unique, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's kind of good that we are not structured like a county because county governance means elected county officials, and it's just another layer of bureaucracy. Okay. We don't have that baggage. So we can roll up our sleeves, get the regional work done without all of that, right? Now, the trade-off is that we don't have, as you said, a taxing authority. Yeah. And one of the most recent ways that is challenging us is that so much of funding opportunities out there now do create a match or do require a match. You know, a lot of the federal funding that came out of the BIL and, IJA and all of that, 25% match. We don't have that. So we've been struggling as COG, even though we're eligible applicants for that funding, how we structure getting those matched dollars. It's not as easy as just, raising a mill rate or raising a match. We could never assess our municipalities' dues to create millions of dollars of match money for those programs. However, I think we're structured nicely with the board of directors made up of in this region, 15 CEOs giving guidance and direction. Right. And after all, they are elected, so there is a certain element of accountability. We don't spend money without their direction. Yeah. We don't create spending plans without their direction. There's great oversight. We're audited. Yeah. We often have strings attached to some of our funding mechanisms. COGs are funded this is the way COGs are funded. Most of the funding comes from transportation through the federal government, through the state of Connecticut. The next highest pool of funding comes from the state of Connecticut, the Regional Services Grant that is designed to help further regional goals to create efficiencies and save money and explore regional activities. Dues is a very small part, the municipal dues, and then other grants that we might obtain competitively or from a formula. So we're not a nonprofit, we're a quasi-governmental agency, but I think we're positioned well without some of the baggage that comes with being another arm of government, another layer of government.
Almost, the county system almost competing for authority and impact with other regional government entities. I've seen it a lot. Now, counties are a historical hand-me-down from England, and where there are counties all over it, and the French had the parishes, and the federal government recognizes counties as being, at least for terms of financing and distributing money, often they'll say, well, we want to give this money to counties because most every state in the union has counties or parishes, and we don't. And there was kind of a sea change a couple of years ago when the federal government decided they would recognize the COGs as functional counties in terms of financing.
County equivalent.
Yeah. So that must have made a big change.
Well, so we still haven't explored all of the opportunities that might afford us now that we have that official designation. And we're still looking into that because there are some complicating factors. Because Connecticut doesn't have counties, the federal government has created formula funding to mirror some of that to the state of Connecticut. And so we certainly don't want to be the recipients of that and mess around with our state government structure, And the way we're funded also kind of has built-in requirements to be partners with state agencies. And I don't see that as a bad thing.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's baked in. You've got to be able to work with the state agencies, have a much closer relationship with state government than you might otherwise need to do as a county. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, speaking of money, as you know, it is no secret that we're looking for ways to diversify and expand our funding at Sustainable CT, and we're enormously grateful for the support we've received over the years from the Tremaine Foundation and Common Sense Fund and Hampshire Foundation, and those that have supported the Community Match Fund too, including Green Bank, supporting organizing work, et cetera. But we need to we need to diversify and expand. And one of the ways we're doing this is by launching our very first direct appeal to Connecticut residents, the Campaign for Sustainable CT, that is going on right now through December 31st. The Hampshire Foundation has generously offered to match every donation to the campaign, which is a really big deal. Tell me, why do you think Connecticut's residents should care? Why should they donate to Sustainable CT, in your opinion?
Well, when you're making a decision about how to distribute your philanthropic dollars, which I hope everyone is doing to some degree, I think what people want to know and about Sustainable CT is that each and every action, event, and effort that emanates from involvement with Sustainable CT creates a stronger, more resilient community.
Yeah.
And whether it's outside your front door or it's in a community where you work, where you play, where you conduct commerce, it's happening all over the state of Connecticut. So I think that it's you will get a lot back from your investment if you help fund Sustainable CT.
Yeah.
Because those dollars really do make a difference. And it is giving municipal CEOs a playbook. Let's face it, the job of being a mayor or a first selectman or a town manager in Connecticut is much more complicated than it's ever been. So when you consider all of the areas that a municipal CEO is responsible for, to have a playbook in their hand on how they should make decisions and make priorities is helping their municipal officials be more efficient.
Yeah.
And employees and volunteers of boards.
And finding that common ground, that common vision that you share throughout the state almost in every town. I love the way you put it. It's like it's outside your front door, or it's all the other places you go and experience your life, where you're working, where you're playing, where where you're traveling to through the state. We're having a pretty remarkable impact. And the whole concept, local actions, statewide impact, it goes both ways. It's also all the stuff we're doing is very local. It's hyper local in a lot of respects. And all together collectively, that has a great statewide impact. But it begins with that local effort and that local impact. Yeah.
And I think everyone should know that those actions have been carefully curated. They're not fluff stuff, right?
Heck no, they are not. And we've heard a lot from CEOs of town administrations that this is not made to be easy. This is not supposed to be a cakewalk. We're not handing out plaques and points, because la la la. This is actually representing real meaningful change and effort and growth on the ground, impacting people's lives in real ways. So it's not easy. It is a challenge. There are a lot of things about it that are indeed aspirational, but that's important. We need to make progress. We need to make it in a timely manner, and we need to be able to say to our citizens in the towns in which we live, look, we have your best interests at heart. We're doing the right stuff. We're moving in the right direction. And it's that roadmap you're talking about. Sure. If you're listening out there, and I hope you are, just consider us sometime before December 31st. We're not going to come to you all year about this. This is a short-lived appeal we're doing. And if you are able to support Sustainable CT in any amount, the Hampshire Foundation will double it, which is really a big deal. It just means it's going to double your impact, and that will make a big difference to us in the year ahead. Let's talk about you're a very strategic thinker. I mean, we've talked before, not here, but at other times we've talked about money and strategic thinking and where the organization's going and where we'd like to see it go. Share some of your wisdom with us, because how do you think in the future, Sustainable CT, what kind of opportunities should we try to pursue to strengthen our financing, expand our reach and impact? Where do you look at us going strategically?
Well, as a board member, we know that diversification of funding is a cornerstone of being a healthy nonprofit. And that's what we are now. To our listening audience, we did start out as an arm of the state of Connecticut, and we are now a standalone nonprofit. And we know that we shouldn't depend on a single source of funding for all of our operations. It's just not a healthy way to exist, right? So
the IRS doesn't like that either. So.
And the IRS doesn't like that either. So, and it's not sustainable.
Right.
As we're learning with some of our funders who are aging out of supporting Sustainable CT, not because they don't want to, but sometimes, funding agencies go out of business, so to speak, or sometimes, funders have a board of directors who want to go in a different direction with their dollars. So this isn't unusual that a nonprofit is facing a challenge that we have looming ahead of us. So we do have to take some efforts now to look at other opportunities. I am hoping to be able to convince the state of Connecticut to help us a little bit. I think that we have demonstrated that our work with municipalities and has furthered a lot of state goals that multiple agencies have. We have action items that have touch points with DOT, with DECD, with Department of Agriculture, with DEEP. DEEP is the obvious one, right? But we have action items that have touch points with all of those different agencies. So I am hoping that we can get a little bit of money from the state of Connecticut. I think we can do better with getting some corporate sponsorship
Yeah.
We've done a little bit of that, but if you look at some major corporations, again, look at our menu of action items. We have touch points with major employers. We have touch points with, businesses that are thriving in downtown and our main street.
Yeah.
And I think we have to do a little better job of making that connection with the corporate world. Thrilled that we're doing this direct solicitation.
Yeah.
Because we've learned through our community match fund that people are willing to invest in their communities, right? So yay for anyone who's ever contributed to a community match fund project, but now we might need your help operationally as well.
Right. Well, and especially because you made me think of all the companies that there's that synergy, that there's definitely a connection in what a lot of the alternative and renewable energy companies are trying to do in Connecticut. We definitely are on the same page in a lot of respects when it comes to working with trash removal, we're right with you. We've got to work with those companies as well. Now, it's always a little touchy. You've got for-profit entities. They have a purpose and intention. They're trying to make money. We're not begrudging that. They're out there trying to make a business survive, which means growth for them and making a profit margin. We have the longer mission goal in mind, what the effect of these companies are going to have on our quality of life in Connecticut and how they can really help our neighborhoods, communities, and municipalities flourish. Within that capitalist paradigm, they're out there to make some money, but we got to work together. We got to get together to figure out how this is going to be best for everybody who's being impacted by this. So alternative energy, renewable energy, trash hauling, and handling of waste in Connecticut has become almost scandalous in how that's being addressed statewide. It's a problem for every town CEO I've talked to for one reason or another. If it's not individually in that town, it is regionally become a real issue. So we got to work with these companies who are coming in with interest to try to affect that. And I agree with you, a lot more effort in the corporate sponsorship area. But it's the same philosophy as going to the state and saying, look, state of Connecticut, we're doing your work. We're doing the things that you want to accomplish. We're making it happen. We're helping it happen. We're facilitating that. We bring that value to the table. So give us a little help to do it.
Right.
Let's work together.
And yeah. I think we need to, for many reasons, I think we need to shed the us and them mentality.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And realize that we're all part of the same ecosystem and we all have our role to play. And, if we can strengthen and nurture that mentality in society, we'll get to the solution a lot faster.
Yeah, especially if we respect one another's opinions and treat one another with civility. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. What keeps you, we're almost out of time, believe it or not, and I want to get your sense of kind of a question I always ask in the show is what makes you hopeful? What keeps you looking forward with a sense of positivity?
Well, I think that Americans in general are just so eager, despite what you might see on TV or listen, in talk radio or whatever. Yeah. I think most Americans are very eager to make their communities better. And I learned a long time ago that from a wise man that people want to do a good job if they know what a good job is.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So if we can continue to talk about what it is that makes us happy, what makes us healthy in an open and respectful manner, we are going to do great things. And what keeps me hopeful is that is happening on a one-to-one basis all over the state of Connecticut in every single community. It's happening at the state legislature. It's happening one-on-one with the governor. I see it in my work every day. Unfortunately, I don't think the public has access enough to those respectful, collaborative conversations.
Yeah.
What we hear are snippets, and often those snippets are the tough parts of those conversations.
The negativity sells, and it moves a lot faster.
Negativity sells. And so I've been that in a lot of my, friend conversations when they'll talk poorly about government. I'm like, well, that's not really how that happened.
Yeah. We're human beings. We have families. We have desires like everybody else does. We're trying to do good work. Like I said, people want to do a good job. I don't get up every morning and go, I want to see how badly I do today. I'm really looking forward to, you wake up with a sense of hope. You wake up with a sense of, I'm going to go out and do something meaningful today and affect people's lives in a positive way. And for somebody in local government like you have been, that's what it's all about. How can you affect your neighbors and your community in a positive way? That's what you're there for. That's right. Could you imagine a life's work at the end of which you go, well, I'm sure glad I messed up all along the way and, didn't help anybody. That wouldn't make any sense. Laura, I always like talking to you. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. We are, believe it or not, out of time. And I hope to get a chance to talk to you again soon.
Well, it was a pleasure. And thank you for your role in providing this communication framework for sustainable CT.
We try. All right. Thanks, Laura. Bye.
All right. You have a great day.
You too. We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of the Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. As always, this program is recorded, produced, and copyrighted. By Sustainable CT. From all of us at Sustainable CT, we wish you and yours joy, peace, and togetherness this holiday season. May the coming year bring you nothing but good health and abundant good cheer. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. Thanks again to our good friend and Sustainable CT Board Co-Chair, Laura Francis, for everything she does to make Connecticut a better place. Thanks to you for donating whatever you can during the campaign for a Sustainable CT. And thanks to everyone for taking local actions that have a statewide impact.